so that we can be on time. This is a pretty long presentation tonight. And Mimi is welcome, everyone. Mimi is going to walk you through life after Montclair, a bittersweet time for us as your children move on to new schools. And I'm not going to take up much more of your time because Mimi has a lot to share with you today. So, welcome to Mimi.
Yay! Thank you, Kathy. This truly is a team effort. They say it takes a village, and the village of Montclair is loving, warm, connected, and collaborative, which are some of the qualities that you're going to want to put forward in this process. Um, so, Life after Montclair, yes, there is life after Montclair. For some of you, you've done this before, and you know that there are wonderful educational opportunities up ahead. For some families, you have not done this before, and you think, oh my gosh, I'm not from New York, I'm not used to this. Little insider secret, no one's from New York and no one's used to this. So even people who grew up in New York and went to an independent or public school here find this new and daunting. We're here to be your guides, to be your flashlight. Knowledge is power, and we want to give you as much power as possible. In the old days, I used to also give you dark chocolate and mandarin oranges. I look forward to the opportunity to do that, hopefully in the not too distant future. The year ahead is going to be exciting, and your X-missions process, if you are going to be a K-eligible 3 or a 4 next year, begins pretty much this spring. More for the independent schools than the public, but it's a good time to start getting your ducks in a row and start understanding what lies before you. Because once we start in September, you will hit the ground running, and it will be full speed ahead up through February for the independent school process and throughout the spring if you are looking at your public schools. One quick word before we get into this. For those of you who celebrate, Purim is coming, right? Many of our families celebrated maybe a Fat Tuesday into the Lenten season, and then Easter is coming. For other families, Lunar New Year is still in process. It's all new beginnings, and this is a fresh beginning after a year that, well, it had rewards that we did not expect it to have, and it had challenges that surprised us and blessed us with how strong we are. I'm going to cry when I think. But our family is our school, and our school is our family, and together we are very strong and moving forward. And the year of the ox promises to be calm, stable, and confident. It is going to be a very measured process rather than last year, which was the year of the rat, which was a little more helter-skelter. So on that note, let's talk about life after Montclair.
And just one more note, Mimi, for
What's
those who
that?
have questions, for people who have
Oh,
questions.
yes, absolutely. So those of you who have questions, and the questions will come up, we're going to ask you to hang on to them until the end. This is being recorded, so if you have to jump in or out, don't worry. We love that you're doing this live and look at it again later to figure out some things that you may have missed along the way. But a live presentation resonates, even on Zoom, more than when you're sitting and watching a recorded presentation. That said, you usually get a shiny folder at your Life After Montclair seminar. This year, it will be sent home to you tomorrow or early next week, depending on where you are in the process. All questions will be answered at the end. If something is burning during that time, please bring it to the attention and Kathy or Jenny will alert me. But for the most part, it is helpful to wait until the end, and we have built in some time for the Q&A. Okay, so life after Montclair. Why in the world is finding a kindergarten spot so darn competitive? For most of you, you grew up and you went to the school that was down the street, you went to the school that was in your town, or maybe you went to a school, you might have gone to an independent school, but pretty much you applied, you registered, and that was it. Why is New York City so competitive? Besides, that it's New York City. First of all, there's a lack of private school spots. Siblings and legacies will take these spots first, and community members. So first will come anyone who has a sibling at the school. They'll get their spots. They'll apply in, and once they get their offer, as will anyone who is faculty or a community member. And then finally, legacies, people who attended the school in the past. After that, there may be only a few spots left, or there may be a lot. It really depends. Some schools are looking at applicants from not just the Upper East or Upper West Side or even the 5 boroughs. They're looking at schools for applicants from Westchester, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut. So depending on the school, it may be more and more competitive to get in. The birth dates for public and private differ. For private, you have to turn 5 before you enter school, and for public, you don't have to turn 5 until the end of that calendar year, the December 31st. There is a trend to hold children back in private schools because the age span can be so great. It can be a 15 to 18 month age span within a grade, and our youngest children, especially the boys, don't always fare well. But then when they're pulled back, then they get the spots, and it pushes those spots down in age. There is a dearth of strong public options. Families will move into good public zones. I'm sure you guys all did that yourself or thought about it first. But as some schools become good, then the infrastructure cannot sustain the growth. So high-rise buildings are created and everyone wants to move into one school. It's still the same school that was built long before the high-rises were ever there. And the G&T, gifted and talented, as you may or may not know, is up in the air right now. Last thing we knew is the test for it has been pulled. There may be a new process into qualifying in for next year, and they will take all of next year to decide how they want to assess children and when they want to assess children. This is a big political juggernaut, so this is not the end of it, but it's certainly the beginning of a new era. And then finally, tuition. For those of you who are looking at your independent schools, it is a handsome sum that you're allotting to your child's education. And for those of you who have the resources, who are able to allocate those resources, that's great. But for some families, that's not a wise allocation of their resources. So that's why it's so hard. Okay, so kindergarten. What are my options? In public school, you must turn 5 by December 31st of the year you enter. You have an option of your zone school. That's your local, your neighborhood school that you are zoned for. There are also some non-zone schools, and that might be a specialized public program that takes child from within the district. You have your zone, which is smaller, your district, which is larger. And then gifted and talented district and citywide programs that a child tests into. Well, we're not testing in anymore, at least not in the way that we once did. There are also specialized programs such as Hunter and the Special Music School. Another option for kindergarten might be a parochial school or a Jewish day school. Most of those have the same public 1231 cutoff. A parochial or Jewish day is a private school that's affiliated with a religious organization or attached to a synagogue or a church and or an archdiocese, and whose curriculum includes general religious education in addition to secular subjects. So it's not a religious school per se, but it is imbued with those values and direct education. Tuition costs there may be significantly lower than independent schools, which is why many families avail themselves of these options. Those are different than independent schools, such as Heschel or say St. David's, who are independent schools that are informed by a religious background. And we'll get into that a little bit more. Independent schools, a lot of us call them private schools, but they are truly independent. For those, you must turn 5 before September 1st of the year you're entering kindergarten. They're governed by a self-perpetuating board of directors as opposed to being owned and run by the government, a private entity, or by a diocese or religious institution. That's why they're called independent rather than private. Families decide what they want from a school, and then they try to find a school whose mission, philosophy, values, and approach to teaching matches their needs and beliefs. And that's where we help you. Okay, in your folder, you will see a list of resources. There are organizations, blogs, multicultural advocacy. In this day of social media, I highly recommend that you look at not just a school's website, but look at their Instagram. Instagram is very telling. And then within their Instagram, there may be one for their museum program and one for their athletics and one for their Model UN. So there are great ways to follow the life of a school. Facebook, great resource for a school, and even Twitter. It's interesting to see what certain schools might tweet or not. But a word of caution, some schools are better at social media than others. It doesn't make them a better school or less of a au courant school. They just might be a little rusty in this area and might need a little time to get with the program, so to speak. Okay, exmissions by the ages. Some of you are in the twos program and suddenly got this invitation from me that said you are K eligible, which is insane if you're 2 years old. But in fact, you will be turning 4 this fall, this coming fall, and the following fall you will be turning 5 between September 1st and December 31st. That makes you a K eligible 3. You will be eligible for your public options, but not yet for your private options. And so you have 2 tracks that are split. In the 3s, you can look at Hunter College Elementary School, the public school zone, the gifted and talented programs if they exist, and the school at Columbia University. If you don't get what you want in that 3s year, you have this wonderful option to return to Montclair to our junior K program for the 4s program in independent schools for kindergarten, and you are eligible for 1st grade options for your public schools, and we'll guide you in that. Some families want to avail themselves, see if they get what they want, and then move on. And some families are not interested in their public options and will simply skip that portion and go straight to be our oldest 4s. Our oldest 4s is that junior K, and they are eligible for private K and public first. Then comes our middle 4s, and they will do both the public and private options simultaneously in their 4s year. And then our youngest 4s, our summer birthdays, will also do public and private simultaneously in their 4th year. But they may have an option to go from that youngest year and be given the gift of time. It's also known as redshirting, which I think is a hockey term. But they may be able to be given the gift of time. They can do a soft push, look at some of their independent options, and then if they are not yet ready or they weren't able to get what they were looking for in some of the more competitive schools because of their age, they're able to come back here and apply in from a point of strength. It's generally the July and August birthdays, but certain June birthdays, especially for the boys. Okay. Public options, a public school process, gen ed, charter schools, that's like Success Academy, dual language programs, which are generally within your gen ed schools, and then gifted and talented. You're going to see a lot of question marks and to be determines this year because a lot of things are up in the air. And we're here to take in any information we have, share it with you immediately, but also help you process what information is out there. We will have a public schools process seminar in the fall. The exact timing still be determined, but usually it's in October, early October. The Robin Aronow email service you will start with usually in August, and more about that. It's a kindergarten updating service. And then tours. Virtual tours usually happen, or tours usually happen in autumn, but not all schools offer tours. Once again, in red are those gifted and talented programs and accelerated programs. We'll talk about what the difference is. They're not over yet, they're just in limbo right now. So what will the assessments be? What will the programs be? Will we hold a rehearsal workshop for students as we start understanding what these assessments might look like? Of course we will, but we have to see what that timing looks like and what that processes look like. Okay, independent schools. Now I've got something that's covering this. Let's see if I can move it down here. This window that says, please move this window away from shared, but it won't move. Okay, it just moved. Independent schools process. Tours, interviews, events, assessments, and report. You'll have a child interview, a parent interview, there'll be community events. We will fill out an ISAGNI, that's the Independent Schools Admissions Association of Greater New York School Report. And we also will use some of these ISAGNI assessment tools. There will be in-school assessments, off-site assessments, child interviews, and this year, for the first time, something called the T&E, the Thinking and Engagement Assessment, which occurred over Zoom, which I believe, with some insider intel, will happen again next year, but a new version, not the same one as last year, so don't think that you can use your grip notes. And then the FLI, which is used at Riverdale and Horace Mann in conjunction with their child interview. What we do to prepare to advise parents. First off, we get to know your family. We meet you from the first time you have your twos cocktail party, all through all of our events. We understand what you guys are looking for and what your educational ethos is. We solidify that in the consultation meeting and throughout the process, but we really start to get a sense of you from the minute that you come in. That's why we're a community. We also assess the learning and participation styles of children and how they fit with the ongoing academic programs. After doing that, we're able to make appropriate recommendations about educational philosophies, approaches, and settings. The settings could be campus school, it could be something in town. It might be something that you want to be in a neighborhood, and it a lot of times has to do with school size, that you feel comfortable or where your child might flourish or thrive. Independent schools, there's traditional and progressive. In fact, they're all a blend of all of these things, and accelerated programs. There are single sex and co-ed programs. We also have public options that would be our gen ed zoned, our non-zoned, and accelerated or gifted and talented programs. What we do at school to help prepare the children for on-site assessments? Well, that starts from the minute they come in also. Getting to know who they are, getting to feel a sense of individual agency, but also learning how to be part of a group and to bond and collaborate. Some of the things we do for the assessments are table time, skill time, puzzles and pegs. We do assessment rehearsals and workshops. Of course, our curriculum is what prepares our children, and our enrichments, the ABT and uh, um, the film program, Rightopia, that we do. Um, Also, your teachers encourage higher order thinking skills, not just what color is this or how much is 2 plus 2, but what do you think will happen next? What will happen if I put ice into the hot water? Just really making predictions and metacognition, connecting with their past experiences. We encourage self-help and independence. You guys will often be amazed that your kids clean up and put their own coats on and do a variety of things that they are comfortable doing in the classroom, because self-help is incredibly important, and independence and confidence is incredibly important to a child's learning. We expand their comfort level to interact with a variety of adults in a variety of settings. Obviously this year our specialists are Zooming in, but still every morning you greet us. We see all our teachers, we see all of our administrators, we have conversations. There are some programs which are lovely, but they do not get to meet as many different adults and voices and different expectations. Our children tend to be incredibly comfortable going into new school settings because they're confident talking to a variety of adults. And then, of course, we educate you to the assessments, expectations, and the logistics. All right. What can you do to help your process? Be organized, be informed, and be communicative. You have to encourage your own children's independent risk-taking and collaboration. It can be a little bit harder, especially for first children or onlys. It's very important that you organize your time and tasks, that you understand just how much time this process does take, and share with the people that you work with that this is what you're doing, because most people in New York have been through it in some measure or know someone who has. And so there's more compassion in your workplace than you would imagine. There's also some bad advice, but that's another topic. Follow the calendar we have prepared for you. That's going to go home in your folder. And then there's what to give Montclair me and when. There's a list of schools applying to, release forms, and you will give everything goes through me. All roads lead through Rome, and I am Rome as far as admissions, exmissions, reports, all of that. And don't worry, we will have another meeting in September that really breaks it down for the independent school process. And then finally, it's just very important for you to communicate openly, clearly, and consistently. And then finally, a safety or a backup plan is imperative. And it must be something that is certain and realistic. You can't just say, if I don't get in, we'll move, because you may not be able to move right away. You might say, if we don't get in, I'll just go to my local public school. But then you might look at your public school and say, that's not appropriate for my child. We'll have to move first. So make sure whatever your backup plan is realistic. We often tell the story of a mom who said, if we don't get into these schools, then we're just going to move up to our place in Westchester. And they didn't get into the school of their choice. And she moved to Westchester with her son, but her husband was not aware of this plan, and he stayed in the city with the older son. This is many, many years ago. We don't expect that to happen to you, but it can be We use it to underscore that it is important that you really have a very clear and realistic backup plan. I miss having an audience. Usually you guys are laughing. Now I just hear the porter. Okay, this is the calendar which we have set for you. I'm not going to go through it each month. You will see it, but it's important that you hang on to this folder and look at it, because it really tells you what to do from February now, where you're attending this seminar, all the way through April, May, and June. Some things may change, especially with the G&T, but the September through February is the independent school process. And then February through June is when the public school process really kicks in. But we will talk about it in October. All right. So can't make this go away. All right. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, what to know if you're interested in public schools. The birthday cutoff for public school kindergarten is December 31st. If your child turns 5 by December 31st of the kindergarten year, they're eligible for public K. What did I just do for that? Most Montclair families live in District 3. District 3 covers the west side of Manhattan from 59th Street all the way up to 122nd Street, from the Hudson to Central Park in 110th, and it reaches Fifth Avenue just above the park. To find out what school you are zoned for, there's a website, but really you can just Google Find My Zone School in New York City and it will take you there, and you enter your address. Some families live in District 2. Some families live in District 5. Some families live in District 6 or 7. If you don't live in District 3 or District 2, if you are in District 5, 6, 7, then you and I will have a separate conversation about what this looks like, because the majority of our families are in 3 and some in 2. But due to overcrowding, you should pre-register your child at a zone school. You can do this even if you're applying to gifted and talented, citywide accelerated programs, or lottery schools. You should do this even if you think I'm only going to do private schools. It's important that this is part of that certain backup, and your zone school is that. At our meeting, we'll talk about how to rank it so that if you don't love your zone school and aren't able to move, there is a chance that you may get a school within your district other than your zone school. There are several good gen ed public schools on the Upper West Side, independent of the specialized programs. They include, but they are not limited to, PS 87, PS 199, PS 166, PS 99. Those 4 are the most sought after. PS 452 and 191 are both Rising Star schools. 452 has been for quite some time, but since it's relocated to 61st Street, not as many families are seeking that. And then there's also PS 75, which is not on this list, but it really is a Rising Star school. It's just right down 96th Street on West End Avenue. Kathy and I have both been impressed with the PS 75. So if you are zoned for that, let's have a conversation about what that school is looking like these days. Gifted and talented programs. Once again, we don't know. But even though we don't know how it's going to roll out, I still felt it was important for you to understand what those programs are out there and if they are going to come back. If they are going to, if you will be able to avail yourself of them, you should know what it is you'd like to avail yourself to. So a district G&T is really an enriched program. That means all the public schools follow the core curriculum, but a district G&T program will, because everyone tests in at a certain level or is recommended because of a certain level of performance, then they're able to move through the curriculum more quickly and thus get more enrichments, and also maybe get a preview of next year's core curriculum. They're located within the public elementary schools that have the gen ed. These programs give admissions priority to students who live in that district. A citywide G&T are school-wide. They're usually standalone schools. A couple of them may be housed and share it with another program or two. These programs accept students from across the city, all 5 boroughs, and do not give admissions priorities based on where students live. That's an accelerated program. Once again, it's still the core curriculum, but the way the children test in, they may be doing first grade work in kindergarten or second grade work in first grade, depending on where their reading and math levels are. All right. District gifted and talented programs are in rich public schools, undetermined assessment to be used to determine eligibility if they're moving forward. There's 3 in District 3 where we live. That's PS 166, the most sought after, and a good gen ed school as well. PS 163, which is right here on West 97th Street, that is not as sought after a program by Montclair families, and PS 165, which is even less sought after by Montclair families. If you're interested in any of those schools, when we have our meeting, we'll talk about what those schools look like. In District 2, there's PS 77, there's 198, there's PS 11, there's PS 33. There's a bunch more because District 2 is huge. Requests for testing that you used to do in October and then test in January, no longer available. Citywide accelerated programs. The most sought after in the city is the one right here in our district on the Upper West Side. It is on West 77th Street. Tag Young Scholars across the park on East 109th Street and I think 2nd Avenue. Less sought after, that is a big bustling program, and that's one of those programs that has several schools housed under one roof. And then Nest Plus M, new explorations in science, technology, and mathematics. That is down on the Lower East Side, a couple blocks away from where I live. That is a K through 12 program, and they have 100 seats in their kindergarten as opposed to 50. Now, what's going to happen with these standalone programs? Once again, we don't know. So this is going to be a thorny issue, not just for parents, but for teachers and the DOE itself. So as we learn more, we will share more. Okay, Hunter College Elementary, that castle across the street, across the park. It's a publicly funded, tuition-free school that serves a diverse population of children who have been identified as intellectually talented. They have their own assessment that they do. It is a collaboration between CUNY and Hunter. It is not a public school, although it follows a public school calendar, and it has its own curriculum. The only entry point for HCES is at the kindergarten level, and then again in upper school. Each year, 25 boys and 25 girls are admitted. And then there's usually a wait list of 6 boys and 6 girls. All applicants must meet the age and residency requirements. That means you must live in Manhattan. Bronx, Queens, Staten Island does not qualify for Hunter. Okay, how to apply. First, you're going to request an application online. It usually comes out in August, but wait, because once you schedule from the date of submission of the applications, families have a 3-week window in which they must schedule and complete their child's testing at an assessor's office. Please wait until your child is back in school and acclimated. And you can ask your teacher, are they sharing all their information? You're not going to ask, are they ready to take a test? Because only God knows that. What the teacher will tell you is, Are they open? Are they taking risks? If you children want to please, and if they don't know the answer or aren't sure what you want them to say, they will say, I don't know, even if you ask them, what's your name? They just sort of freeze up. So wait until they're feeling comfortable. Once you take your test, it's subtests of the Stanford Binet by an approved Hunter psychologist. They'll give you a list to choose from. Hunter no longer shares the cutoff scores with parents or schools, but if you qualify for round 2, you will be notified. It's usually in mid-December. This year, not in mid-December. Nothing ran along normal timelines. We're hoping to have a more normalized timeline next year, but we don't know, which is one of the good things about us all being together, right? Is that we're able to share this information as quickly and efficiently as possible. There's also the Special Music School of America. It's a fabulous school, but really quite difficult to get into. Special Music School is a public-private partnership between the DOE and Kaufman Music Center. As a public school, it's tuition-free, but the process is akin to private admissions. After receiving your application, the school will assign an assessment time after your child's 4th birthday. They can only guarantee to see the first 400 applicants. However, they will continue to accept applicants up until December 1st. Applicants who are not among the first 400 will be placed on a waiting list and given an assessment if and when space becomes available. There's a website, you click on it. There is a short form that your teacher will fill out. There are 16 boys, I think it's, no, not even 16 boys. There are 16 children in their kindergarten. And these children have been identified as intellectually talented, as well as having an innate talent in music. Your child doesn't have to play an instrument to go and assess there, get the assessment there, but their assessment tries to unearth the little musician, the what's that word that I'm thinking of? Child prodigy. They're looking to find a musical prodigy, and so it is incredibly selective. In our 20th year here, we have only had 2 families who have been given offers. The first family, the child was the son of the first violinist and the cello player for the Metropolitan Opera. They chose not to pursue that option because they wanted their child to have a more normal life. And then another family who, considered it very closely, but chose an independent school over that. So by all means, apply for this school, but it's more than just, oh, my kid really loves Music with Noel. He knows all the lyrics. It's more than that. It is a very selective process, but you got to be in it to win it, and it's free. So if you feel like that's something you want to pursue, by all means do so. You will get this handout in your folder, and it is some of the D3, District 3 schools of note. It said in 2017. They're pretty much the same now this year. Some of the principles may have changed, but it basically gives you the websites and the schools in District 3. Also, it gives, if you'll see here, PS 333, the Manhattan School for Children. That is the only non-zone school, lottery school, and it is the only school that, although they do follow the core curriculum, they have a progressive, hands-on approach. It was a much sought after school for many years, and it has recently fallen out of favor. But, there are many families that are happy there, and if you're interested, by all means, check this school out. Okay, District 2, if you live on the east side or below West 59th Street, you live in District 2. It's basically most of Manhattan. It sprawls over most of Manhattan, beginning at the Battery and reaching 59th Street on the west side, 97th on the east side. Just below it in like 5D and the Lower East Side is District 1. District 1, the entire district is a more progressive approach and a lottery system. So it's not zone schools. Everyone goes into a school by lottery down there. Okay, good gen ed programs. Listen, I just put some up there that I know are sought after, and families have given us great feedback. This is not an exhaustive list, but we've got 2 on the Upper East Side, 2 in Chelsea, 2 in Tribeca, and 2 in West Village, just to give it a start. Okay, this calendar is a calendar for the public school process. It will also be in your folder, and it really breaks down month by month where things are for you, what you should be doing. It may change a little as far as, the gifted and talented assessments. In the past, gifted and talented assessments happened in January, and then from April through August was the score notifications, and then also it let you know if you got the placement or not, because it's all a lottery. We'll have to see what that looks like this year, but it's going to be a lottery. We just don't know how you enter that lottery. Okay. To stay up to date, you're going to keep up with the Robin Aronow emails. We'll talk about that more later. This year, K eligible for 2021, the approximate timing that applicants will hear back from the DOE, just to give you a sense, March and April, you'll get the kindergarten placements for zoned, non-zone, dual language, and special music school. Registration will start in April, and then wait lists will be in effect all the way through spring, summer, and into October. April 1st, charter schools such as Success and many others, it's just one of the more well-known ones, that is their charter school application deadline, and then results will be out within a week or 2 after that. Either you'll receive an offer or you'll be waitlisted. There's no rejections, there's just waitlists. Gifted and talented, this year on March 8th, a request for consideration for a gifted and talented program will open at My Schools NYC. That's where you apply for your public zone school. Applicants in private school programs such as ours will have an interview with a DOE staff member who will then complete a questionnaire about their gifted traits. It will be interesting to see what this looks like. In mid-May, the applicants will learn if they are in the lottery for a kindergarten gifted and talented placement. Siblings will have priority. And then June through August, the notifications of gifted and talented placement will come out over the summer, sometime before the start of school. If this is something that you're looking at, they don't give you a week to think about it. You have to answer right away. And if you go on vacation, please be sure to check your emails and answer your phone, because they may skip over you if you don't respond to an offer. Okay, so who's this Robin Aronow we keep hearing about? The email updating service. You'll get emails that I forward to you that says NS update for public kindergarten admissions. In order to stay up to date with all the changes of admission procedures and deadlines that are taking place each season within the DOE, Montclair, as a kindness and a service to our ex-mitting family, provides Robin's email updating service. This is not something you can share with anyone else. This is not something that we provide to you. We give you the service, but she is the public school guru who has her ear to the ground and will let us know about any changes. Now, some of you may have seen me before at CST, DOE meetings. I do attend them. I do the research as well. I am connected with Robin, but she is the one who is the gatekeeper for this information. She also does some workshops on her own. There will be a public schools workshop that I have attended in the past, and an independent schools workshop, which I've also attended in the past. So she is a good source of information. This year they will be virtual. Okay, so assessments and evaluations. We're going to get through the public school process and then move on to independent schools for those of you who are waiting. Zoned and unzoned gen ed public schools, no assessment is given, no teacher evaluation is required. You sign up on a list, you put down the schools that you most want, and then you find out if you got your zone school or you got waitlisted, and if you're waitlisted at other schools that you prefer above your zone school. For the gifted and talented, district and citywide, assessments and timing thereof are still to be determined. More information about this will be given as it becomes available and in the public schools process meeting in October. Hunter College and the Special Music School of America have their own teacher evaluation forms that are used if you make round 2. Forms will be given to your current teacher. All forms go through me, you give them to me. I make sure that your teacher fills them out, and then they get sent back to the appropriate administrator. The former link will be given to me, and then we will see what happens afterwards. All right, so Hunter, how do they determine this intellectually talented child? Well, Hunter uses the Stanford Binet, but not the full Stanford Binet. The full Stanford Binet is an IQ test. They use certain subtests that might indicate intellectual talent or future giftedness. But because it's only certain subtests, it is not an IQ test. So your child's score will not be their IQ, and you won't even learn the score, but this isn't a full battery that's given. Principal knowledge, skills, and abilities measured are both verbal and nonverbal. We'll go through this more right now. Technically, it's fluid reasoning, knowledge, quantitative reasoning, visual spatial processing, and working memory. All of these things are assessed by every school, just in a different manner. So we will go over that a bit more in future slides. The former G&T assessments, the OLSAT and the Montclare, were intended to provide an indication of intrinsic ability. They sought to measure how well a child could problem solve in different contexts. And these skills may still be assessed in the future for G&T, but in a different form. So I thought I'd leave this here for what they've done in the past. Pattern completion, problems require children to identify the option which will complete the pattern. Reasoning by analogy requires the identification of relationships between shapes or objects or stories. If this, then that, what comes next? Serial reasoning, problems require children to identify the shape, object, or outcome, which comes next in a pattern. And then spatial visualization problems involve visualizing how objects might look when they are rotated or otherwise transformed or combined. Okay, now we're ready for the independent schools. Now, for those of you who may want to peel off because you don't think you're looking at the independent schools, although I think it's important to learn about that, please know that at the end of this seminar, we do have a whole bunch of kindergarten readiness activities and materials that we'd like to share with you. So if you can make it to the end, great. If you can't, this will be recorded and uploaded to Weebly, or only for Montclair families. And does anyone have a quick question right now about the public school process before I move on to independent schools? Karen Moe.
Sorry, my bad. Clicked the wrong button.
Oh, okay. Never mind, Karen. All right. So you guys ready for the independent schools? Whether you're in a bucolic setting or here in town, there are plenty of options for us, and we are going to go over all of them. Okay. We start this And every year I don't know why I do this, but I think I do know why. In fact, I do know why. We do this because we take seriously the investment you're making in your child's education and your family's educational life. Next year, a child who's entering kindergarten next year, I started with a kind of mid-range. It's not the lowest tuition, but it's also not the highest tuition. This is kind of right there in the middle. This is Dalton. It will be $55,210 for kindergarten. In sixth grade, and this is assuming a level K-12 tuition with a very conservative 3% tuition increase per year. In sixth grade, 66 grand. In ninth grade, 72. By 12th grade, we're getting, closing in on 79 with a total of $862,253. And that's just tuition. So we understand that this is serious stuff. We laugh, we joke, we make this as comfortable as possible, we make this as loving as possible, but we take very seriously this process and everything that you put into it, your sweat equity, your heart, your emotions, and also that we understand that this is a serious allocation of resources. Some families choose not to do this now, and they may look at independent schools for high school. Some families choose to do it for the elementary grades and then look for public high schools, the sci-highs. And some families, just really feel like this is the most important investment they can make, and they have the resources to do so. There is also financial aid, but even with financial aid, we understand that this is a serious investment, and most of all of your heart, because it is your most important, I can't say possession, but resource is your child. And so we just want you to know how seriously we take this and how important we know this is for you. Okay. So what do you do when you're applying to independent, also known as private schools? Okay, the birthday cutoff is September 1st. If you're born on September 1st, if you're born on September 2nd, it doesn't count, which is why Montclair is very wise about when you get into the 3s and then again the 4s, really making sure that we honor those cutoffs so that you can be as best prepared for the independent or public school process for our K-eligible 3s that you can be. If your child turns 5 before September 1st, they're eligible with these exceptions. The school at Columbia University, which is a partnership with the university, St. Ignatius Loyola, which is one of the most sought after parochial schools, and also some of the Jewish day schools. If you stay in pre-K the following year, you can still be considered for these schools for kindergarten after the following year. If you move on to a kindergarten, then you would have to apply to them in first grade. Does that make sense? There's a little word about the Hill schools and summer birthdays. The Hill schools do their best. Now, the Hill schools are Horace Mann because they're up on those hills in Riverdale. Fieldston Lower and Ethical Culture, even though it's here on the Central Park West, it is still considered a hill school because they move to Fieldston Middle and Upper. And then there's also Riverdale. Those schools really do their best to stay within that calendar year. Sometimes they'll make an exception for an August 31st birthday, but for the most part, if you're a summer birthday and you're thinking about redshirting, giving your child the gift of time, you should look at the Hill schools in your youngest 4's year. Many times, because schools redshirt so much, some of our most sought after schools, such as Trinity, Brearley, Collegiate, they may not have spaces for such young birthdays, because they have someone who is a full year to 15 to sometimes even 18 months older than that summer birthday. So if your child is a summer birthday, please don't despair. There are summer birthdays that go to Trinity. There are summer birthdays that go to Columbia Grammar. There are summer birthdays that go, to all of the best schools. But we can talk about the strategy for what makes the most sense. You don't necessarily want your child to be with children who are 18 months older than they are. Kindergarten might be fine, but once you start getting into those middle school years, there is more than just how smart they are to take into consideration. What you're going to take into consideration is their executive functioning. We'll get into that more later, but it's their ability to maturely collaborate and be part of a group and be confident while doing that. All right, timeline for applying to independent schools. In the spring, this spring, starting now, we are going to begin to research to develop a list of possible schools, even before you have your meeting with me and Kathy. Kathy will join our meetings as well when she's available. Any meetings that she's not there able to attend because there are other pressing school matters, I always fill her in. So Kathy's always part and parcel of these meetings. Even if you haven't had your meeting with us, please start researching, please start going on school tours. Our oldest kids will get the earliest meetings, and our youngest, the Honey Bears and K-eligible twos, will not be getting meetings until towards the end of school. I'll explain why more a little bit later, but now is the time for you to provide your own lead. Join the Parents League. By all means, please join the Parents League. It is a wonderful resource. It is a great backup. It is a wise investment. I just can't extol their virtues more. And we are part of the Parents League. Sign up for your virtual spring tours and open houses. I'll show you some more of those later. Check for emails forwarded by me. So a school may send me a flyer. I used to put those up on the bulletin boards. Now I will forward them to you unceremoniously. I'm not going to do much more than just do a quick forward. So you're going to have to scroll down when you see that. But also check websites or call to see if they're offering open houses or group tours. Attend any virtual fairs, panels, workshops, or community events. The Parents League Kindergarten Fair and Admission Panel, Robin Aronow, and Montclair's own PA Parent-to-Parent Admissions Panel and Fair is phenomenal. You're going to meet with me and Kathy. You keep an eye out for an invitation to schedule. It will be sent from oldest to youngest classes throughout the spring. If your child is a sibling or legacy at a school, let them know now. Let them know this spring, hey, Susie's going to be applying in next year. Is there anything I need to do now? Anything I need to schedule? Sometimes they'll say no, and sometimes they may have such a long list of sibling applicants. This very often happens with Trinity, that they may want to talk to you in the spring or over the summer as a pre-meeting. For families of color, and by that we mean African American, South Asian, and Asian, and Latino, Latinx, if you should contact Early Steps if you choose to work with them in addition to us. Early Steps is an organization that advises and assists families of colors in the admissions process for kindergarten and first grade. There's a call in June of that year. Your child turns 4, and there's a website. You can't go in there. You can't just call. We'll let you know how that's rolling out. They don't take our place. They are just an additional resource. And a wonderful one at that. Buy or download on Amazon or Google Books, Manhattan Family Guide to Private Schools and Selected Public Schools, 7th edition by Victoria Goldman. If you're one of those analog people, this is a great resource. I really highly recommend websites, but I think that this family guide is also great. I used to love the Barron's Guide when I was looking at colleges. That was a long time ago. Join the Parents League. Here's the Parents League information. You will have all this information in your folder. There will be a virtual kindergarten fair this April. It has yet to be announced. I got some insider information about that. They have, but it will be announced shortly. They have a new web page on their Parents League site devoted to information about virtual fairs. So first you'll go to the Parents League and then to events, then upcoming events, and then underneath that, there'll be a tab to hit about school fairs. I highly recommend that you attend this. The next one is a mock-up from last year's postcard, and I just did some handy dandy editing. So here it is April 19th to the 23rd. Of course, it's going to be virtual this year. Representatives from over 85 independent and private schools, not just New York City, but also Westchester, Connecticut, Long Island. There will be a panel discussion. Last year's panel included Grace Church, Brearley, United Nations International School, Packer Collegiate, and St. David's. I go every year. Okay, yay, the MPA, Parent-to-Parent Exmissions Fair at Montclair. It's going to look a little different this year and still working that out. But our community is phenomenal, and I can't tell you how many alumni come back, not only to share their new school, but to support Montclair families and parents and our staff and team. The panel discussion represents a cross-section of educational philosophies, approaches, and settings. So it might be single sex, it might be a Hill School, might be progressive, might be an accelerated program, and then there'll be a Q&A. And then the fair is current and former Montclair parents at approximately 25 ongoing private and public schools share their experiences about the admissions process in their school. Used to be a real live fair, right? Now we're looking at ways to do it maybe in breakout groups or in separate Zooms. That's still to be determined, and a whole lot of work by our families who I am privileged to work with. And you'll see that representative schools really, kind of an A to, well, not C, but A to W of the independent schools, as well as a whole bunch of public options for you. So I highly recommend you come to that. And even if you are not ex-mitting next year, but you're looky-loo too, by all means, come to this because it's phenomenal. So we're gonna ask you to go on spring tours. You will be glad you did. Your docket will be so packed, even though it probably will be more of a virtual experience next year as it was this year. But the more you get underway this spring, you will be glad that you did. Call the schools, check their website. Each school handles it a bit differently. Don't wait for your meeting with myself and with Kathy to see what schools you should look at. Take it upon yourself, and then we'll have more chats about that when we do have our meeting. An emailed invite will come out to you to make an appointment to meet with me. This meeting takes 40 to 60 minutes. Both parents should attend. It's of course going to be on Zoom this year. At this meeting, we'll discuss your child as a student, citizen of the classroom, what the private school application process is like, the schools you should look at, how to do it concurrently with any of your public options, and you'll leave this meeting with about 10 to 13 schools to look at. That doesn't mean that's the number of schools you're going to be applying to, but you'll have a wider range to choose from. Some of the schools offering spring tours, not all offer them, and not all those who do offer are listed here. I'm not going to go through it right now. This will also be in your folder. But more schools are having some spring events, albeit virtual, just to give parents more time to get to know them. and also go on their websites. A lot of these schools created virtual tours or videos where parent community or alumni and students talk about their experience. It's a good way to get a lens, a window in on a school. These are the co-ed offerings so far this year. Some people just haven't planned them yet. High school admissions starts tomorrow. Notification is tomorrow. The early childhood program was today. So we've got some busy admission directors. Single-sex schools. Usually the single-sex schools do not do it. This year we've got Allen Stevenson Browning and St. David's, as well as Chapin, Marymount, and Nightingale. And Spence is considering possibly doing it, but they're all going to be at the Parents League Fair. Okay, so what else do you need to do? Well, there's a special note about parent participation in the process, especially volunteerism and the all-important ISAGNY teacher report. The schools are looking to add to their community, and thus they're looking not just at the kid, but at you and at your family. And they want to know, how do you interact when you're in their midst? Or how will you interact when you're in their midst? How easy are you to work with in the admissions process? Please don't be difficult, and please don't ghost them. Be flexible and be communicative. Will you add to the fabric of the community? And we'll talk more about this at our coffees. There's a space in the report that asks us to elaborate on parents' participation in their child's school life. And of course, I'm happy to announce that our families are lovely. And I mean that genuinely. We have wonderful families who we are privileged to partner with in their child's education. But they're still looking for some hardcore instances of volunteerism. Not everyone has the same skill set or resources, but everyone has something to bring to the table. So if you don't have the time that some families may, you may have talents, you may have materials, you have something to bring to the table. Sharing your family and your culture is one of the things you all do in the threes, and we note that. So there are many opportunities. If you feel like, yikes, I haven't done anything, I've been so busy and life has been so crazy with COVID and virtual work, how am I going to do this? Don't worry, we got you covered. You know what? I'm going to skip this for 1 second. Here are the PA volunteer opportunities for spring 21 and 21-22 school year. We are lucky to have our PA co-chair, Onima, on this call right now. She is exmitting herself, but if there's any questions at the end, I'm sure she could help you. They're looking for the spring social committee. They're going to need volunteers from each classroom pod in addition to the classroom parents because of social distancing. The event will be in May, and details and call for volunteers to follow. The all exalted and all important winter benefit committee. At least 3 spots are opening up. Even though this is for next year, they're going to need to be confirmed soon because planning begins soon for next year. Onima and Urvashi shared that they want it to be extra special for our 20th year. We're 20 years old, you guys, and we're going to be celebrating that next year. For the 21-22 school year, we're going to need class parents, grade ambassadors, admissions committee, alumni committee, book club, charity committee, game night, holiday fair, Montclair cares, photo shoot, yearbook. And even if you're not on a committee, there are extra volunteers that are needed for that. Parents, easy to register your interest just by throwing a quick email to the PA chairs at Montclair pa.org. The PA will have a Zoom info event for vacant PA positions the week after spring break, which is the week of 4/6. The date and time will be confirmed. Onima, did I miss anything?
I think you covered it all, but we'll just put a plug in. Just email us if you're interested. There's so much to get involved with, and we'd love to have you. And if you have any new committees that you'd like to start up, we're always happy to do that too. So join us. Yeah.
Excellent. And you know, volunteering in any capacity, but certainly at Montclair, you know, it's always like, oh my gosh, do I have the time? This is so stressful. But once you're in it, the people that you meet, the community that we have, the fun, it expands your social life, and you get to talk to adults instead of small children or the people at your job. But there is this sense of community that is lifelong. I have to say that Montclair parents come back years and years after they've left, and they're at independent schools or they've moved away, and they say, you know, we still go on our spring break with Montclair families. We still have play groups. We still meet at the beach. Montclair families are really special, and a great way to meet them, especially during these, you know, socially distanced time, is by volunteering. And we couldn't appreciate all that you do anymore. Yeah. All right. I miss seeing faces. Seeing your faces and talking to you, I usually make you laugh.
Mimi,
All right.
before you go on, are you going to talk a little bit about the Isagany report?
Yeah,
Who...
that's coming up.
Thank you.
Summer and so let me go back actually, because so you're going to volunteer in some capacity. You're going to draft a boilerplate essay in late spring, early summer. You're going to start filling out and submitting your applications. Please don't bunch it up all at once, but they will open up in mid-August, and by the end of September, you should have submitted all your applications. You'll still have time to add more or drop more, but that's about the time you want to look at. You're going to make appointments for parent interviews and child interviews and for their assessments. Please do not jump the gun and give your child the first assessment in September, because they need some time to acclimate before they, get the summer out and get back into the school groove. You're going to submit a list of schools to which you've applied to me with all your signed release forms. You don't give them to your child's teachers or to anyone else, and you're going to be sending thank you notes to the schools you have visited. Don't worry, more about the Isagany thing is coming up. In the summer, you're going to collect anecdotes about your child, because your parent essay should look like they've almost met your child through stories. If you just list all your child's qualities, not memorable. They're funny, they're capable, they're compassionate, great. But if you say, she gave away her beloved Nuffle bunny to a crying baby on the plane, well, that makes me smile, and I'm going to remember Trixie because of that little story that you shared with me. You're going to refine your school list. You're going to go from that list of 15, and you're going to start whittling it down. You're going to check the school websites for applications. You're going to mark your calendar as to when to contact schools for an application. You're going to clear your calendars for autumn and early winter. Even though remote, it still is a time-consuming process. And then I also want you to rest and just have some fun with your children and your mate. Okay. In fall, winter, you're going to request and download the applications when available. You'll submit. You'll complete and return the applications as early as possible, but spaced apart. Many schools will not schedule your tour interview until you have your application, although that's kind of changed in COVID. But pace yourself. Don't get in a clump. Have a few practices before you have your most important visits and interviews. Think about it when you're interviewing for a job. The first interview you have, you don't want to be the job you want most. You want to work up to it, both for you and your spouse or your mate, and also for you, for your child. And you don't want to have more than 2 per week for your child. You can clump up for yourself as much as you want to, although I don't really recommend it. But for your child, no more than 2 a week, and definitely no more than 1 a day. Siblings and legacies. If your child is a sibling or a legacy, let the school know this spring now that they're applying next year. If you want the optional early legacy notification program, you'll indicate that in the fall. If your child is offered a spot and you accept, you are then obliged to attend that school and withdraw your applications at all other schools. It's a thing of beauty, really, because you are done with the process in December. You will submit supplementary application materials. And if you're applying for financial aid, do so when you apply. You're going to apply through SSS or TADS, submit your financials, and then they'll come back with a amount based on your financials that you can pay for that. And if you qualify, please let me know if you're applying for FA, not because I get into your finances, I do not, but the timelines are slightly different for those families who apply in for financial aid. You need to keep track of your applications and then check the deadlines and complete all necessary steps required for each school. List review, make an appointment with Mimi, and Kathy often joins these as well, unless she's helming something else that's quite important at her school, around the end of November to discuss the schools you've applied to. This is sort of, you give the feedback, I listen, and you start kind of forming which school would you choose above another. This should take a half hour to 45 minutes in December or January. Are you ready to commit? Is there one school you love above all others? And then you're going to send a love letter. That is a de facto first choice letter. ISAGNY schools cannot, in their bylaws, require a first choice letter, but people are, take note when a first choice letter is given, love letter. And we have very specific guidelines around that. You can't, it's a proposal of merit, so you cannot give it to everyone. You must give it to only the one that you love the most, and then you will pivot to your next choice. But we help you work that out. And then you must have a safety or backup plan that truly works for your child and family. I will not repeat that horrible story of the family that was bifurcated because they didn't have a backup plan, but it's important that it is realistic. It's important that it's something that you want to do. Robert Barron, may I ask if you would mute your microphone? Thank you so much. All right, moving on. Here's that ISAGNY. All right, so student evaluations. If you have applied to an ISAGNY school, it's an Independent Schools Admissions Association of Greater New York, your child's teacher will be asked to evaluate your child using the ISAGNY teacher report, which is a standard form like on the application you received from the schools to which you've applied. We have a digital copy. You don't have to give us a copy of it. It's often submitted and uploaded through Ravenna. When we have our private schools meeting in September, when we first come back to school, we'll go through all of this in a very granular sense. So don't worry. Your child's current teacher will fill the report out after getting to know your child during the first 2 months of school. The reports are then evaluated and carefully edited by myself. The reports are strictly confidential. Parents are not permitted to see them, but please be assured that the reports are written to present you a strong, positive representation of your child at school. We never say anything that isn't true. It is a fair and balanced report, but it's also written from a point of strength. your child looks good, and so does your family on this report. The reports are sent to the specified schools prior to the winter recess in December. They are all uploaded as a piece. You may want to share with me what the due dates are. Thank you very much. We do know what the deadlines are. We don't do them earlier because it behooves us to wait until the very end in case you come back to me and say, my child just had a complete meltdown on Zoom and he didn't separate and he wasn't his best self. Maybe we can address that, how wonderful and cooperative and collaborative your child is. We might also find something fascinating about your child during the ABT workshop or during one of our Building the Land of Sweets or the gingerbread. So we give the fullest representation of your child by giving your teachers the full complement of time. They will be sent out prior to winter break. Sometimes they will be uploaded right away via Ravenna, and sometimes a more analog school may take some time to not only receive it, but then upload it, download it, and mark it in your file as received. So you're going to wait until January for that. Teacher recommendations are different than the teacher ISAGNY report. At times, a school will request that you collect recommendation letters for your child. You may ask a family friend, a coach, a teacher of a class you've taken outside of Montclair, or a person with a connection to the school to which you have applied to write a letter on your child's behalf. I know a lot of families will be like, why can't their threes teacher write the ISAGNY report? They know them so well. They've known them for a year. How will this teacher who's only known them for a couple months possibly write as good of a report? Well, it is extraordinary because it seems unusual that they would. But really getting to know them, your teachers start collecting anecdotes the first day of separation, the first phase-in day. They collect those anecdotes. They know exactly how to assess your child, connect with your child. And by the time winter break comes, they are fully bonded, know your child and your family quite well. As far as a recommendation is concerned, you don't want two of the same reports to go out. You already have the school's point of view on your child. So you want an additional, either a family point of view, a coach, or a, perhaps a musical teacher for that. The recommendation letter will be mailed to the school by that person. It should not be mailed by you. All right, testing for ISAGNY private schools. Different this year. They created something called the Thinking and Engagement Activities. The T&E and most ongoing kindergarten assessments will assess a variety of hard skills as well as more open-ended. Some portions are designed to measure verbal, quantitative, and figural reasoning skills, detecting likenesses and differences, recalling words and numbers, defining words, following directions, classifying, establishing sequences, solving arithmetic problems, and completing analogies. They also might include some culturally neutral, for those of you who English is your child's second or third language. There's also some culturally neutral reasoning tasks. Use of abstract shapes and designs allows for unbiased scoring, regardless of a student's primary language, education, culture, or socioeconomic background. They will also be assessing social emotional language, that is both your child's expressive and receptive language, and executive functioning. More on that in just a tad. Okay, principal knowledge, skills, and abilities measured by verbal and performance assessment tools include, I'm not going to go in through all of this. Once again, this will be in your folder, but vocabulary, information, general questions, their knowledge of the world. Why do you use an umbrella? What's it there for? Most children will say, because mommy told me to. But what they're really looking for is it keeps me dry, it keeps me safe, it could keep the sun off me. The more answers they have and the fuller answers they have, the more your child's points will go up. Similarities and differences, comprehension for general principles, as well as social situations, social understanding and savvy, using pictorial and verbal questions. Block design, matrix reasoning, and picture concepts are all certain things that may be assessed in both public, in the Sanford Binet, as well as in the independent schools. Okay, so what really is kindergarten readiness? What are the schools really looking for? Because a lot of us think, well, my kid's really smart. They can read, they can count, so they'll do great on an assessment, and then that's it, right? Or my child's cute as a button, very sweet, they're delicious. They'll take one look at that face and they're going to want them, right? Well, it's a little more complex than that. We support readiness in all the developmental domains. There are 4 developmental domains that we're going to be talking about right now. There's physical, social emotional, language, cognitive, and under cognitive is executive functioning, which is also part of social emotional. There's your gross motor, how you plan, your core strength and stamina, which helps you pay attention, your fine motor, hand strength and dexterity, and your self-help skills. There's visual motor planning. That's your body in space, puzzles, drawing, writing your name. There's visual discrimination. That's the ability to distinguish shapes, lines, colors, similarities, and differences. That has a lot to do with pre-reading. And then there's also sensory integration and self-regulation. What's the sweet spot? How can you be both calm and alert? And can that child regulate his or herself to that point in order to be as focused and receptive to learning and collaborative as possible? Social emotional, they're going to look at friendship. They're going to look at sharing, turn taking. Are they conversive? Are they open and flexible? Your disposition, are you open? Are you curious? Do you take risks? Are you resilient? Are you flexible? Independence, self-help, organizing yourself and your materials around you, self-reliant, confident. Your language, your expressive language is your ability to share your ideas, your information and thoughts, and get your needs met and to ask questions. Your receptive language is your ability to take in information, hold on to information, follow directions, and then apply that information again later. Literacy is your interest in stories, following along, being able to sequence, make predictions, ask questions, and make connections to your prior knowledge. So a book about apple picking, a child might say, oh, I went apple picking with my grandparents last weekend, and then a conversation might ensue. Cognitive. Those pre-academics, basic understanding of the written word, letter recognition, especially their own name, number recognition, at least 1 through 10, rote counting, usually up to 12, but perhaps higher. One-to-one correspondence, that's being able to count out 7 Unifix cubes and know at the end that you have 7 cubes within your bowl. Your ability to pattern, sort, and seriate. Executive functioning is the most important thing that they're looking at. That is your working memory, your ability to take in information, hold on to it, and apply it in new context. Your self-control and your self-regulation, your problem-solving ability, your cognitive flexibility, and your emotional resilience. Executive functioning, because this is important, so we're going to talk about what this looks like. Your working memory is your ability to hold and manipulate information in your mind for short periods of time, remembering what happened at the beginning of the story by the time the ending comes around. Inhibitory or impulse control, the ability to control your behaviors or responses. That's not grabbing a toy from someone, it's waiting your turn in play and also waiting your turn in conversation. That's hard for kids to do. That's one of the things that will really help them do is wait and listen. Very tricky stuff for most adults do. Cognitive and mental flexibility. That's the ability to transition from one activity to another with ease, going from a matching task to an opposite task, from playing inside to playing outside, from asking a concrete question, what color was Billy wearing, blue, to an open-ended question. What do you think Billy's going to do to solve his problem? What do you think is going to happen to Billy next? Emotional flexibility, emotional resilience, and problem solving is the ability or understanding that when conflict or frustration or disappointment arises, that they or a trusted grown-up can find another solution, and everything's going to be okay in the end. That's that whole pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and start all over again, or realize it's not a big deal. Some kids will sit in their emotion, right? So if they feel sad, it's hard for them to get out of the sadness. Or if they're angry, it's hard for them to get out of the anger. Some kids can brush it all off, and some are really able to just problem solve through it. It seems like, gosh, how can you assess that, or how can we change that? Part of that's growth and maturity, right? Part of that's just chronological aging. But another part of it is really being scaffolded by adults who are guiding you, who understand you, and understanding where you are in your cognitive development to be able to problem solve or be resilient or flexible. That would be your teachers, and that would be you guys. Okay, how to prepare your child. Help them be independent. Help them do things for themselves. Help them think for themselves. Help them problem solve for themselves or soothe themselves. Don't fix everything for them all the time. Let them go through an emotion. Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going, because you don't want to stay there. You want to get out of wherever you are. But it's okay to have a negative feeling. It feels good to know that you can solve that problem and that a good feeling is coming after. Stamina, your core strength and even regulation for an extended period of time. A lot of times people say, well, so what if they're floppy? They're super smart. It is hard to learn when you're uncomfortable, and you are uncomfortable if your core is not strong. We have a hard time sitting at our desks and our chairs for a long time. Kids are asked to sit on a rug where there's no back, and they have to engage their core. They sit crisscross applesauce, so their legs are out in front of them. They're sometimes on chairs that are too high or too low. And so the more they strengthen their core, the better they're able to attend to the task at hand and enjoy themselves. Sociability, friendliness, and good manners, entering and sustaining play, cooperating with one another, and collaborating with one another. Resilience and flexibility, going with the flow, bouncing back, being flexible, not always leading. That's especially hard for our oldest and our onlys, because they are used to being bossy pants, and their adults might find it adorable. Teachers and admissions people assessing it and fellow students may not find that bossiness as adorable as you and your parents do. So giving them another option. Risk-taking, going out on a limb, cognitively making a prediction. Socially, joining a new group. Emotionally, going through a feeling you haven't done. Or physically, climbing up the slide for the first time is a physical risk that's appropriate. We don't want them to take inappropriate physical risks, but we do want them to have a sense of what's appropriate risk-taking for themselves within a safe manner. Language and conversation, incredibly important. Full sentences. A lot of times you ask them a question and they give you a one-word utterance. What do you want? Snack. Do you want red juice or orange juice? Red. So say to them, oh, please tell me, Mommy, I would like the red juice. So help them expand their sentences in conversational settings. Let them ask questions. Let them make predictions. Have open-ended discussions and listen. Skills to practice for assessment tools. Gross motor, walking. Listen, it's time to get them out of those strollers. I know it's so hard. You're so tired and you're so late. And if you put them in the stroller, zoom, zoom, zip, you're back at school or wherever you need to go. But if they don't have practice walking, that's where they engage their core. And it's not just walking, it's about attending and collaborating in school. If you can't handle them walking because they're slow as molasses, get them one of those stable little scooters. Those are great. If you are able to, most kids do not encounter stairs until they come to Montclair. And so ascending and descending stairs is incredibly important. So whenever you're able to, if you live in a high rise, of course, you're not going to climb 22 floors, but maybe you can go up 2 flights and then take the elevator from there, or maybe you can go down to 3 and take the stairs down from there. So that's one thing. The beach is phenomenal. Walking on the beach, digging, swimming, fine motor. Believe it or not, the monkey bars are incredibly helpful for developing all of those muscles that you need for writing, both for your shoulder as well as your wrist and hands. Pulling and pushing, spray bottles, lacing, beading, coloring, drawing, mazes, manipulatives, and bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is really fun and a really great way to get them to work on that fine motor pincer grip. Visual motor, playground, gymnastics, sports, hopscotch. We have a hopscotch board here. You guys should draw some hopscotch boards in front of your building. It's a lot of fun. Puzzles, block play, magnet tiles. It also helps, the monkey bars help with that visual motor planning. See, that girl is kind of figuring out, all right, where do I need to go next? So it's not just her strength, it's her brain that's learning that. Visual discrimination, I Spy, Spot It, Where's Waldo, matching mazes, hidden pictures, sensory integration and self-regulation. Sometimes just let them play. You know, our kids are way overscheduled. So just plain old open-ended play is incredibly important. Your brain is a muscle. When you go to the gym or when you're working out on your Peloton, you're actually tearing your muscles. When you go to sleep at night or when you rest afterwards, that's when your muscles start repairing and it builds those muscles. For children who get filled up all day long with all sorts of information, sometimes open-ended play that doesn't look cognitive is the best way for them to process and sort that information and for their brain to grow. A good night's sleep, there's nothing better than a good night's sleep, but also plenty of unstructured open-ended play. Get your yayas out. Let them have sensory play. Let them get messy. If you can't deal with them being messy at home, find some messy materials for them to play with outside of school. Kinetic sand is great. And then sometimes just find a cozy spot to just chill out. Put some nice music on. Skills to practice for social, physical, and social emotional. Oh, this is one of my favorite pictures. Play dates, new experiences, and plenty of opportunities to practice. Board games, social emotional, books and themes, self-help, eat and dress and make choices, separation rehearsals, Zoom rehearsals. We're going to talk about that. Because a lot of the assessments and interviews will be Zoom next year. Schools would love to welcome you in, but before they can welcome outsiders in, they have to start by safely welcoming their own families in, and some of their faculty who have been off-site. So I don't think there's going to be opportunities for your children to go into the schools or for assessment. The Stanford Binet is done at a psychologist's office, and they're able to socially distance that the way your pediatrician might. So that's the only one that probably wouldn't be on Zoom, but we'll see. Language, expressive, ask them what they think. Ask them to make predictions. there's something about when a child asks you a question and you get to be the expert and you get to tell them why the sky is blue, that feels great. But before you fill them up with all your answers, ask them to, well, what do you think? That's a great question. Should we look that up together? Receptive, that's following directions. Sometimes it's fun to have a verbal obstacle course or positional words. Can you take the blue pillow and place it beneath the chair that's beside your brother? Beneath, beside, above, below. There's a lot of positional words that you think your children know, but they don't necessarily. And that is a huge part of these assessments, are positional words and also temporal. First, second, third, fourth, and then recall. Categorization and classification games are great. With literacy, read, keep reading with them. Try to get off your iPhone if you can, or iPads if you can. And while they're reading, model your own reading. Audiobooks are great. Instead of throwing a DVD on in the car, put a book on tape on. Rhyming books, very important. Rhyming is incredibly important. Alliteration is important. That the sounds of those language, it's something they'll assess. Longer, more involved picture books. And illustrated books, not picture books, but comics and those graphic novels, the ones that are appropriate for kids, are great. And also chapter books. We'll talk about whether chapter books are appropriate for your child yet. Do not foist that upon them, but that might be a great way to go for some of our older threes. Cognitive. Look at environmental print, menus, instructions, write lists, cards, have guessing games, teach your child the why of the world. Why do we wear shoes? Similarities and differences. Set the table, unpack the groceries, notice the numbers in your environment. Categorization and classification games. Sometimes you can do, I like when you see a dog walker down the street, you can say, what do all those things have in common? Well, they're all dogs. What else? They all have 4 legs. Hopefully they all have leashes. They all have tails. But then what is different about them? Some are big, some have pink leashes, some have stubby tails, some are curly, some are black, some are white. So finding the similarities and differences in everything around you while you're riding the bus, walking down the street, hanging out, it's a great way to get your kid ready for these assessments. Cognitive. Puzzles, patterns, block building, ordering objects by different attributes, quantity, size, shape, and color. This is where you get to put your kids to work. Cheap labor. Actually, there's nothing cheap about having a child, so I retract that statement. But have them do chores. They love feeling capable. It's a lot of sensory integration, but it's also sequencing. It's also seriating. It's also ordering and organizing. And it gives them a sense of confidence. So dishes, cooking, laundry. Laundry's a great one. Kathy loves that one, right, Kathy? Match those socks. Okay, here's another thing that I'm not going to go through, but it will be in your folder. Incredibly inexpensive activities that promote readiness. And there's a million things you can do. It's all right, maybe 20, but they're on this list and we can continue to add to them for years to come. The Montclair PA Book Fair 2021, our virtual fair is scheduled for Monday, April 19th through Sunday, April 25th. It may extend longer, I'm not sure, but that's the dates right now. There will be a list of wonderful books that promote kindergarten readiness that I'll put together, collaborating with Sasha and Kathy, of course. But there's also lists of books from your teachers. In addition to these books, there are also readiness materials. The book company that we're working with won't have these materials, but what you can, and I hope you will do, is go to a provided link on Amazon for the Amazon Smile page. If you buy through that link doesn't cost you anymore, but a portion of it goes back to Montclair Scholarship Fund. Here are just some of the games that you might enjoy playing with your child. Guess Who is great for visual discrimination. Dominoes for a million different reasons, and those are fun to just throw in your bag. Headbands, hysterically funny. Pengaloo, great love. Down here, the Pixie Cubes really help with block design and matrix reasoning. There's Uno, and you guys are playing. Oh, what did I just do? Oh, no. We don't want to start again. We're almost done. Oh, dear Lord. Hold on. Oh, oh boy. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll be with you in a moment. So Uno, or just a regular deck of cards. They can build houses out of cards. I don't know if you ever remember doing that, but they can sort. They can, there's so many fun games to play, and it's right there in your bag. Spot It is also another fun thing that tiny little thing that you can throw in your bag. Fun to do at restaurants, or if you're waiting outside somewhere. Classic games like Connect Four or Don't Break the Ice. There's a lot of fun things, and many of these things may be available through the website. That is it for the presentation. We are happy to take your questions now. Please know that if you can't think of a question, or it feels like your questions were answered by this incredibly thorough seminar, we are going to have a kick-off Xmissions coffee. And in that, it used to be we welcomed you with tons of food, and Billy would bring in one of her home-baked cakes, and there'd be coffee. And I would set up a whole sort of fair of materials that you could look at. We're not able to do that, but we're going to make this coffee special by really going through a lot of this readiness and giving you a variety of materials to look at. And maybe you can bring a snack to it. I don't know. But that will be coming up in the next couple weeks. Perhaps the next week, at the end of next week, or early the week after. I want to give you as many opportunities to connect before you start this process. But any questions? I think that Kathy or Jenny are fielding the questions.
We don't have any questions in the chat.
Not yet, maybe.
You're welcome to enter them into the chat, or raise your hand and we'll call on you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, I think. Stop share. So I get to see you more. Hi, everybody. It was weird doing this without seeing you. Yes. I'm glad you're here now. Oh, you don't have to turn on your camera, though. I understand. Oh, hello there.
Oh,
Hi, Mimi. So I could start off with two questions I have. Hi, Mimi.
Sure.
Thank you so much for this presentation. As always, so helpful. So we are K eligible. So we applied for public, but we're leaning towards to independent school. So we would not be accepting, if we get accepted to the zone school, we won't be accepting this year, but we could still apply next year for first grade, along with applying for independent school. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You can apply in for first grade. You just are no longer K eligible. So a backup is your first grade zone school for sure.
Okay, great. And my second question is, I'm not so clear with the recommendation letter that comes from family, friends, or coaches, like just to have a more concrete idea. Would it be like her ballet teacher,
Sure.
or like a tutor that she's been working with during COVID days? Like,
sure.
It could be anybody, or is it somebody that do you think is more appropriate or preferable than others? Or anybody who knows my child the most?
It's a tricky fun, and it trips up families every year. So I'm glad you're asking that now. There's a couple different ways. Some schools will request that you submit a recommendation letter. Not many do anymore, but some will. And that can really be anyone. What you want to do is find someone who really knows your child and knows your family to write the recommendation letter. It just has to be about a page long. And it just sort of says who you guys are as a family and who your child is as a person, not as a learner. Although if it's a tutor, of course, they can talk about that. Sometimes parents will prevail upon someone who is connected to the school they most want to write a letter of recommendation. And if that's the case, we recommend that you wait until later in the process before you tap that friend for that letter of recommendation. The reason being that most people will only write 1 to 2 letters a year for recommendations if it's for their school or if they're on the board or something like that. They want to make sure that the person they write that letter for is not only a good match, but will actually come with an offer. In the beginning of the process, you may be absolutely sure that you know what your first choice is, but I'm telling you, and those of you who have done this before, your first choice can change. It can change from spring to fall. It can change from September to December. And so if you are not 100% positive that with an offer you would come, you don't want to tap them. So those sort of recommendations from a connected person would come more in December than it would later than that. And we will guide you through that. We'll talk about it during the coffees, but we'll also talk about it during your one-on-one consult in the spring. We'll talk about it at your ranking meeting, your list review in November or December. So, the first one is someone who kind of knows your kid and can talk about who they are. If you do have a specialist that works with your child for speech or OT or PT, we don't necessarily recommend that you use those because that can open up a whole new can of worms. But if you have a tutor or a ballet instructor or a coach or clergy member, a family friend, you're welcome to use those.
Thank you.
We have a question in the chat.
What's
Mimi.
that?
Can you give a top line of how play dates process went virtually? What do you mean by Zoom rehearsal? What would that look like?
Why can't I see it?
Oh, it was sent to me. That's why you
Oh.
can't.
Okay. Can you repeat that, Kathy? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Can you give a top line of how the play date process went virtually? And as a follow-up, what do you mean by Zoom rehearsal? What would that look like?
Okay. So the virtual play sessions or interviews, some schools did not use. Dalton only did the TNE, and that was it. Some schools did the TNE and then requested that you submit a video. That video, if they say it's 1 minute long, keep it 1 minute long, people, please. Jenny will agree, will you not? Because you think, 1 minute to 3 minutes, what's the difference? Well, when you have 400 applicants, there is a huge difference. Also, you don't want to overproduce it. The ones that have sparkles and wipes and are really carefully edited and orchestrated have an ick factor. So your kid's not coming through. But the one that really shows your kid playing and connecting with their family and maybe reading a book to their baby sister, all sorts of things. Those things are great. So that's what, schools are looking for. Some schools will have a full-on assessment interview with your child, ethical culture, Riverdale, and Horace Mann did such, and then they complemented it with the FLI, which was a very concrete assessment of skills. Most children just did beautifully with the concrete. It's the open-ended one that can be bothersome for our youngest children. So I can't top line say what it went well or it didn't go well. It's so individual. So some children really interacted beautifully. Some children had a harder time in the beginning and then warmed up in the process. Some children were great guns going forward and then were like, okay, I'm done with this game. I'd like to go back to school now, please. So it really is individual to each child. So there's not one answer to that. Zoom rehearsal, we will talk more about at the kickoff coffee, but get your child Zooming with an adult in which they actually have conversations. And we'll frame this out. We don't have enough time to talk about it in detail now, but I will explain what that looks like. When grandma calls and you give them the phone and they go, yeah, uh-huh, yeah, and then they glaze over, and then you hear your parent shouting, give the phone back to mommy. And then they give the phone back to mommy. You don't want that to happen in a Zoom. You want them to answer and be comfortable with full sentences by listening. Zoom is a skill, and it's an exhausting skill. I mean, are we all not so exhausted by Zooms? So it's something that we really want to give our children practice with, and we'll talk about different ways that we can do that. We don't want to be virtual anymore, but unfortunately there will be some hybrid sense of this in the coming year and possibly for years to come. So giving them this new discrete skill set will be interesting, but absolutely doable because the kids did beautifully this year. The families did beautifully finding the right matches for their families.
Any other questions?
I know you're all tired and it's 7:59. Ooh, I've never been so on time in all my life.
Hi, Kathy. This is Eileen.
Hi, Eileen.
Hey, I don't have any specific question. I just wanted to send my appreciation to you, Kathy and Jenny, to host this exhibition session. I mean, this is my first time attending such a, exhibition session. I find it, thanks for staying, first of all, thanks for staying so late at school, right? You're still at school?
Yeah.
To give us such a wonderful presentation. I find it extremely informative, incredibly helpful. Not only I like the first session, which talks about the schools and the process, but also I also love the second part of your presentation, which is about the strategy to have your kids prepare for the test. I took a lot of good notes. I am really looking forward to more interactions with you, Kathy, Jenny, in the school on the upcoming exhibition process. So thanks a lot for that.
And that's wonderful. Thank you so much for saying that. That really means a lot to us. We love our families. We love working with you guys. And we adore your children. The invitations for the Exhibitions Coffee is coming up soon. The invitation for those to have their conference with me first will be any of our youngest fours, our Yellow Room kids who are returning to the Blue Room, our summer babies. Then we will do our K-eligible threes. Then we will move to our middle birthdays, our youngest birthdays, and then finally our K-eligible twos who will be K-eligible threes next year. We do that, one, because there is more urgency for the older ones, but we also do it because we want to give your child more time to develop and grow as we observe them, so that when we do observe and make our recommendations, you are closer to what it will look like for your K readiness, if that makes sense. the invitations will go out by class and by age group within those classes. If you have a question before that, the coffees are great ways to do that. You're welcome to email me a question, which I might say, you know, we're going to be discussing that at the coffee, or I might be able to answer it very quickly. So don't feel like you have to wait, but do know that your questions and topics that you never even thought you knew were a question will come up in these coffees. That's one of the great things about the coffees, is hearing other people's questions. And we're here for you no matter what. This is going to be a great year. It's the year of the ox, man. Calm, stable, conscientious, reliable. It's going to be great. Thank you to all who have attended, especially my alum families who've already done this before. I know it's torture, but it's going to be so much easier this year.
I just want
So much easier this year.
one
Thanks so much, Mimi.
Thank you so much.